everyone, my name's Daniel, and for the longest time, I thought I had the perfect marriage with my wife, Kate. We've been together for 7 years, and while life wasn't always perfect, I never doubted her loyalty or love until a few months ago. It started with little things. She'd spend evenings glued to her phone, laughing at texts she wouldn't explain. Just work stuff, she'd say with a dismissive wave when I asked. Then there were the business trips. Kate worked in marketing, so occasional travel wasn't out of the ordinary, but suddenly these trips became more frequent, more last minute. I'd kiss her goodbye, wishing her a safe trip, all while wondering why she looked so excited to leave. The worst was her smile. It was subtle, but I noticed it every time she got a message, a soft, private smile, like she was in on a joke no one else could understand. It wasn't a smile she'd given me in months. At first, I told myself I was overthinking it. Work can be stressful, right? People get busy, distracted. But the more I noticed these things, the harder it became to ignore the nagging feeling in my gut. Something wasn't right. I started keeping mental notes. Late nights, unexplained absences, those damn secretive texts. It felt like I was piecing together a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Still, I couldn't bring myself to accuse her outright. What if I was wrong? What if I was just being paranoid? I didn't want to ruin what we had based on a gut feeling, but I also couldn't keep living with the doubt. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. And that's when I decided to hire a private detective. And after wrestling with my suspicions for days, I realized I couldn't handle this alone. Confronting Kate without any solid proof felt risky. I didn't want to accuse her based on gut feelings and potentially wreck our marriage if I was wrong. So I decided to hire a private investigator. His name was Alex, a guy with a solid reputation for discretion and results. We met at a small cafe on the other side of town. Alex was a sharp-looking guy in his early 40s with a firm handshake and a direct gaze that made me feel like he could see right through me. "So, what brings you here?" he asked, sipping his coffee. I took a deep breath. "It's my wife, Kate. Lately, she's been different, distant. She's always on her phone, takes frequent business trips, and there's this look she gets when she reads certain messages, a sort of secretive smile. I can't shake the feeling that something's going on." Alex nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. You want me to find out if she's being unfaithful." "Exactly," I replied. "I don't want revenge or anything like that. I just need the truth, whatever it is." He leaned back in his chair, considering. "All right, I'll take the case. I'll start by tracking her movements, see who she's meeting, and gather any evidence. I'll be in touch with updates." "Thank you," I said, relief mixing with anxiety. "I appreciate your help." As we parted ways, I couldn't help but feel a knot in my stomach. Hiring a detective to follow my wife wasn't something I'd ever imagined doing, but I needed answers, and I hoped that Alex would provide them. Over the next few days, I tried to act normal around Kate. It wasn't easy. Every time she smiled at her phone or mentioned a last-minute trip, my heart sank a little more. But I reminded myself that soon I'd know the truth, one way or another. My goal wasn't to catch her in the act or embarrass her. I just needed to know if our relationship was built on lies. If she was cheating, I had to face it. If not, maybe we could work on whatever was causing this distance between us. Little did I know, the path I was starting down would lead to a betrayal deeper than I could have ever imagined. Before I dive deeper into what unfolded, let me tell you a little about Kate and me, and why this whole situation feels like such a gut punch. We met 8 years ago in the kind of way that feels straight out of a rom-com. It was a rainy Saturday, and I had ducked into a small cafe near my office to escape the downpour. I was juggling my laptop, an umbrella, and a half-spilled coffee, looking like a complete mess. Kate was sitting by the window reading a book with this serene smile on her face. She noticed my struggle, laughed softly, and said, "Need a hand?" Something about her tone, kind but teasing, made me laugh too. I ended up sitting at her table, and before I knew it, we were deep in conversation. She told me about her love for art and how she had recently started working in marketing. I told her about my work in tech and how I loved solving problems. By the time the rain stopped, I had her number, and I walked out of that cafe feeling like I just met someone truly special. Fast forward a year, and we were married. Our wedding was simple but perfect. We didn't have a lot of money back then, but what we lacked in funds, we made up for in love. Or at least, I thought we did. Life together was good, at least for a while. We bought a cozy little house in the suburbs, started talking about kids someday, and settled into what I thought was a happy routine. Kate threw herself into her career, climbing the ladder at her marketing agency, while I focused on growing my startup. We were busy, sure, but we always made time for date nights, weekend getaways, and lazy Sundays on the couch. Looking back now, I can't pinpoint exactly when things started to change. Maybe it was when Kate got promoted to a senior position at her agency and started traveling more for work. Or maybe it was when my company hit a rough patch and I started working longer hours to keep things afloat. Either way, the connection we once had began to feel strained, like a rubber band stretched too far. I used to think our love was unshakable, that no matter what life threw at us, we'd face it together. But now, as I waited for Alex's updates, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd been living in a fantasy. A few days after I hired Alex, I got a text from him. "I have something for you. Meet me at the same cafe tomorrow." My heart sank as I read it. Part of me hoped he'd tell me it was nothing, that I was just overthinking things, but deep down, I knew better. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe early. Alex walked in right on time, carrying a small manila envelope. He sat down across from me, his expression unreadable. "Well," I asked, my voice tight with anticipation. He slid the envelope across the table. "Take a look." I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were several photos. The first was of Kate standing outside a restaurant, her face lit up with laughter. The next photo showed her with a man I didn't recognize. They were hugging. Not the casual kind of hug you give a friend, but the kind that lingers, that says more than words ever could. The last photo was the worst. It was of them walking into a hotel together. My stomach turned as I stared at the images. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "Who is he?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Alex shook his head. "I don't know yet. He's not someone I recognize, but I'll find out. Just give me a little more time." I nodded numbly, unable to tear my eyes away from the photos. My mind was racing. Was this a one-time thing? Had it been going on for months? Years? The man in the photos was younger than me, maybe mid-30s, with slick back hair and an expensive-looking suit. He had the kind of confident smirk that made my blood boil. Alex reached across the table and placed a hand on my arm. "I know this is hard, but we're going to get to the bottom of it." "Thanks," I muttered, stuffing the photos back into the envelope. I didn't even finish my coffee before leaving the cafe. That night, I couldn't look at Kate the same way. She came home late as usual and kissed me on the cheek like everything was fine. "How was your day?" she asked, kicking off her heels and heading to the kitchen. Busy," I said, forcing myself to sound normal. My fists clenched at my sides as I watched her pour a glass of wine, completely unaware of what I knew. I didn't confront her, not yet. I wanted to wait until Alex had more information. If this was going to blow up, I needed all the facts. But every time she smiled at me or casually scrolled through her phone, it felt like a dagger twisting in my chest. I thought hiring Alex would give me clarity, but all it did was confirm my worst fears. Kate was cheating on me, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to look at her the same way again. A week later, Alex texted me again. "Let's meet tomorrow. I have more info." I braced myself for whatever bombshell he was about to drop. At this point, I didn't think anything could surprise me. How wrong I was. We met at the same cafe. Alex looked distracted, almost nervous, as he slid another envelope across the table. "Here's what I found," he said, avoiding eye contact. Inside were more photos. This time, they were of Kate and the same man, Alex's mystery target. There they were, holding hands at a park, sharing a drink at a bar, and walking out of the same hotel. My stomach turned again, but something felt off. "Who is he?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," Alex said, finally meeting my eyes. "I couldn't find much on him. No social media, no public records. But then, last night, I ran into something unexpected." He hesitated, and I leaned forward, my patience wearing thin. "Spit it out, Alex." He took a deep breath. "I think she's seeing someone. Close to you." "Would you mean close to me?" I asked, my stomach sinking. I didn't want to believe it at first, he said, but then I saw this. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photo. It was a selfie, a close-up of Kate and Alex. His arm was around her shoulders and they were both grinning like teenagers. My blood ran cold. "What the hell is this?" Alex looked away, his face flushed. "I didn't think it would get this far," he muttered. "And he reached out to me months ago, before you hired me. We We started seeing each other. I didn't know she was married at first. I stared at him, my mind racing. You're telling me that you've been sleeping with my wife while working for me to Investigator? It wasn't supposed to happen like this, he said quickly. She told me you were distant, that your marriage was falling apart. I didn't know she was lying until I started digging for you. I clenched my fists under the table, fighting the urge to deck him right then and there. How long has this been going on? He hesitated again, and that hesitation told me everything. A few months, he admitted finally. I didn't know what to do once you hired me. I thought, if I kept digging, I could figure out how to fix this mess. Fix it, I hissed, my voice low but laced with anger. You were screwing my wife, Alex. You lied to me, manipulated me, and now you want to talk about fixing things? He had the nerve to look ashamed, but it didn't matter. I stood up, throwing a few bills on the table for the coffee I didn't drink. We're done here, I said coldly. Don't contact me again. As I stormed out of the cafe, my mind was a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. My wife had cheated on me, and the man I'd trusted to help me find the truth was part of the problem. I didn't know who to be angrier at. Kate for her lies or Alex for his audacity. One thing was clear. I wasn't just going to let this slide. I drove home in a fog of rage, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My wife. My detective. Together. The audacity of it all made my blood boil. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the sheer brazenness. How long had they laughed at me behind my back? How many times had they shared my bed, my wine, my life? When I got home, Kate was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she poured a glass of wine. The sight of her acting so carefree, so normal, nearly pushed me over the edge. Hey, babe, she said with that sweet fake smile. How was your day? I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. It was enlightening, I said, my voice tight. She looked at me curiously but didn't press. Instead, she took a sip of her wine and leaned against the counter. I've been thinking about taking some time off work. Maybe we could go on a trip together. Just the two of us? Reconnect. Laughed bitterly and her smile faltered. What's so funny? She asked. Reconnecting, I said, shaking my head. That's rich coming from you. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she kept her tone light. What's that supposed to mean? I took a step closer, my anger bubbling to the surface. It means I know, Kate. I know about you and Alex. The color drained from her face. She set the wine glass down with a trembling hand. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't, I snapped, cutting her off. Don't even try to lie to me. I've seen the photos, Kate. I know you've been screwing the guy I hired to investigate you. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her silence said more than any excuse ever could. How long, I demanded, my voice rising. How long have you been lying to me, laughing at me, betraying me? It wasn't like that, she finally whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. Confused? I repeated, my voice dripping with venom. You seem pretty damn sure in the photos. She broke down sobbing into her hands. I'm sorry, she choked out. I didn't mean for it to happen. I love you, Jake. I do. Don't you dare say that, I hissed, pointing a finger at her. You don't get to say you love me after what you've done. You destroyed us, Kate. You destroyed me. She fell to her knees, crying harder, but I felt no pity. All I could see was the betrayal, the lies, the years of trust she had thrown away. I turned and walked out of the room, her sobs echoing behind me. My mind was racing, my chest tight with anger and pain. I knew I couldn't stay in that house, not with her. But I also knew I couldn't just walk away without making sure she and Alex felt the consequences of what they'd done. This wasn't over. Not yet. After the storm of emotions had settled enough for me to think clearly, I realized I wasn't just going to walk away from this without a plan. Kate and Alex hadn't just betrayed me. They'd insulted me, used me, and thought they could get away with it. They needed to learn the hard way that actions have consequences. The first step was confronting Alex, but not in the way he might expect. I needed to keep him thinking I was clueless, that he still had the upper hand. So I texted him, need an update. Can we meet tomorrow? He replied quickly, of course. Same place? Perfect. The next day, I arrived at the cafe, putting on my best poker face. Alex was already there, his usual calm and confident self. It was infuriating knowing what I knew, but I kept my anger in check. Jake, he said, standing to shake my hand. Good to see you. I nodded, taking a seat across from him. So, any updates? I asked, keeping my tone casual. Alex hesitated for just a second before responding. Not much, he said. I'm still looking into her movements, but nothing concrete yet. The audacity of his lie nearly made me laugh. I see, I said, leaning back in my chair. Well, keep me posted. I trust you'll figure it out, he smiled, clearly buying my act. Absolutely. You can count on me. When I left the cafe, my resolve was stronger than ever. If Alex thought he could string me along while sleeping with my wife, he had no idea what was coming. I spent the next few days preparing. I installed hidden cameras around the house, focusing on areas I knew Kate and Alex had used: the bedroom, the living room, even the kitchen where they drank my wine and laughed at my expense. I didn't have to wait long for results. The footage confirmed everything I already knew. Alex had been coming to my house when I wasn't home, waltzing in like he owned the place. He and Kate would lounge around, laughing, drinking, and eventually making their way to the bedroom. Watching the videos made my blood boil, but it also fueled my determination. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to be the fool they thought I was. My plan was simple but effective. Bring them both together, expose their lies in front of each other, and make them face the consequences. Neither of them deserved the courtesy of a quiet confrontation. They'd lied to my face, so I'd show them what happens when the truth comes out. The first step was setting the trap. I texted Alex and Kate separately, inviting them both to a special dinner at the house. Neither of them knew the other was invited. I could already imagine the look on their faces when they walked in and saw each other. This was going to be a night they wouldn't forget. The night of the dinner arrived, and I felt a mix of nervous energy and cold determination. Everything was set: the cameras, the seating, and the surprise of a lifetime for Kate and Alex. I had spent hours replaying how this might go in my head, preparing for every possible reaction. And Kate was the first to arrive. She walked in wearing a fitted dress, carrying a bottle of wine. "You're pulling out all the stops tonight, huh?" she said with a forced smile, clearly trying to smooth things over after our recent confrontation. I nodded, my face carefully neutral. "Yeah, I figured we could use a special night." She placed the wine on the table and leaned in to kiss me, but I turned my head slightly, letting her kiss land on my cheek. She frowned, but said nothing. About 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I said, heading to the door. Kate stayed in the dining room, probably assuming it was one of our neighbors or a friend. When I opened the door, Alex was standing there, looking confident as ever. "Evening," he said, holding a bottle of whiskey. "What's the occasion?" I smirked, stepping aside to let him in. "You'll see." As Alex walked into the dining room and saw Kate, his confident demeanor cracked. Kate's jaw dropped, her face turning pale. What is he doing here?" she stammered, looking between me and Alex. "Oh, I figured it was time we all got together," I said casually, closing the door behind me. "After all, we have so much to talk about." The room fell silent. Alex shifted uncomfortably, and Kate's eyes darted around, searching for an escape. "Jake, I don't know what you think," she began, but I cut her off. "Save it," I said, my voice sharp. "You both lied to me. You both betrayed me. And now you're both going to sit there and listen." I grabbed the remote for the TV and turned on the footage from the hidden cameras. The screen flickered to life, showing Alex walking into my house, Kate greeting him with a kiss, and the two of them heading to the bedroom. The images played in perfect clarity, the sound of their laughter echoing through the room. Kate gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Alex's face turned a deep shade of red. "What the hell is this?" he sputtered. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is proof of what you've both been doing behind my back. In my house, on my time. You thought you could get away with it? You thought I wouldn't figure it out?" Kate started to cry, her tears falling fast and hard. "Jake, please, I can explain." I raised a hand, cutting her off again. "Don't. I don't want to hear your excuses. The only thing I want to know is how long you thought you could play me for a fool." Alex tried to speak, but I turned my glare on him. "And you," I snapped, "you had the nerve to take my money while sleeping with my wife? Did you think I wouldn't find out? Or were you just hoping I'd be too stupid to put it together?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Kate dropped to her knees, sobbing. "I made a mistake," she wailed. "I was confused, Jake. I didn't mean to hurt you." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't mean to hurt me? You made the choice to betray me every single time you let him into my house. Don't sit there and act like this was some accident." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of their betrayal hung heavy in the air, suffocating any attempt at explanation or defense. Finally, I took a deep breath, turning to them both. "This is over," I said firmly. "Kate, I'm filing for divorce. And Alex? I've already reported your actions to your licensing board. Good luck finding another client after this." Their faces were a mix of shock and defeat, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was in control. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the dining room, leaving them to deal with the mess they'd created. After walking out of the dining room, I closed myself in the bedroom, leaving Kate and Alex to marinate in their shared shame. For a while, I could hear their muffled voices, Kate's desperate pleas and Alex's failed attempts to salvage whatever dignity he had left. I didn't care to listen. I was done with both of them. Eventually, I heard the front door slam. A glance out the window confirmed it was Alex, leaving in a hurry. Not surprising. He couldn't even muster the courage to face me after what he'd done. Good riddance. Kate, however, stayed. She knocked softly on the bedroom door. "Jake, can we talk, please?" I opened the door just enough to look her in the eye. Her mascara had run, her face puffy from crying. She looked as pathetic as I felt inside, but I wasn't going to let her see that. "There's nothing to talk about, Kate," I said coldly. "I made myself clear, we're done." "Jake, please," she said, her voice cracking. "It didn't mean anything. I was stupid, I was lonely, and I made a mistake. But I love you, I've always loved you." I stared at her, the words hitting me like empty bullets. "You call screwing the guy I hired to investigate you a mistake? That's not a mistake, Kate, that's a choice. Over and over again, you chose to betray me. Love doesn't survive that." She started sobbing again, reaching for my hand, but I pulled it away. "You don't get to cry and make this about your feelings," I snapped. "You don't get to play the victim." Her sobs turned into muffled whimpers, and she finally stepped back, defeated. "What can I do?" she whispered. "How can I fix this?" "You can't," I said flatly. "It's too late. I'm filing for divorce, and I want you out of this house by the end of the week." Her eyes widened. "Where am I supposed to go?" "Figure it out," I said, closing the door in her face. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The weight of her lies, her manipulations, was lifting. I didn't know what the future would hold, but I knew one thing. It would be a life without her. The next morning, Kate packed a bag and left. She didn't say goodbye, and I didn't ask where she was going. I assumed she'd either stay with a friend or, more likely, crawl back to Alex. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. I spent the rest of the week setting things in motion. I called a divorce lawyer, changed the locks, and started telling close friends and family what had happened. Their reactions ranged from disbelief to outrage, but every single one of them supported my decision to leave her. That validation was a small comfort in an otherwise painful time. As for Alex, I followed through on my promise. I sent a detailed complaint to his licensing board, complete with the footage from my hidden cameras. I didn't do it out of spite, well, maybe a little, but mostly because I wanted to make sure no one else fell victim to his manipulation and deceit. Last I heard, he was suspended from work and struggling to find new clients. Good. Kate tried reaching out a few times in the weeks that followed. Long, rambling texts filled with apologies and promises to change. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Tell me what you think about that story. Have a good day, and bye.